Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Green Room Podcast here in the Green Room of the Franklin Theater in downtown Franklin, Tennessee. I am your co-host, Massimo Stefano. Next to me, I
am Brendan Ayton. I'm not Massimo Stefano.
Yes. And today we are joined by our first guest, a very special guest, and we have Leland Dix. How you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good, guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing splendid on this beautiful day outside.
That's right. It is a nice day.
It's gorgeous.
It's low-key hot.
All right. Well, before we get going...
I was afraid of this.
We got something to do. A couple days ago, as of this recording, it was Brendan's birthday, and I got to give him his gifts. So just
yeah.
give me,
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22.
hey, T-Swizzle.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Oh no.
So my man here, he's got his own little studio in his bedroom, and he has no trash can. So, and there's something inside for all of us.
Inside. Okay. This, I'm sharing the wealth on this one.
That's why I bought 3. It's Liquid Death, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice.
Thank you, sir. Please sponsor us. But yes.
Please sponsor us. Yeah, thank you. This will be full of Liquid Death cans.
Can you believe Walmart doesn't sell Liquid Death? I was at Walmart. I was on the phone with you last night at Walmart buying the trash can Liquid Death, and they don't have Liquid Death. I had to go to a gas station.
Hold on, I got to do it.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Little ASMR.
Man, that sounded great.
Start it
I don't know
off.
about you.
Yeah.
That sounded great.
I won't do mine. You get this back.
Yeah, I'll put reverb on it in post.
Yes.
Valhalla Supermassive. You just heard it.
We didn't, but you did.
Yeah. Anyway, but Leland, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
You, we know you from Shay, the technical director here. You are currently friends with.
A little more than friends.
Yeah, but we met you through her essentially. Oh, nice. And so you obviously, I want you to kind of explain what you do, but you are a monitors guy, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. Monitor engineer for country artist called Bret Young. Been with him since 2018 officially. I did some gigs with him in 2017, but been with him since 2018.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Through COVID and everything. How much did you guys do during COVID?
At first, so we were in Europe when COVID first started being like, it's like started showing up in the news and everybody was talking about. We almost didn't go. We ended up going, and then we had to return early before we finished all the shows. This was like March 7th or 8th or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
so we literally, we had just done a show in Berlin. We flew from Berlin to Scotland, landed in Glasgow, dropped our stuff off at the hotel, sat down at a restaurant, and then immediately got a call that was like, we are leaving first thing in the morning because Trump was talking about shutting down the borders. And we're like, we're going to get out before it gets nasty.
Yeah.
So we went and had to like find all our gear and then head back. Literally, I found this out on our flight back. All of the country artists that were supposed to perform at the Hydra in Glasgow were all on that flight, and none of us had told the venue staff.
No way.
That's like what I was told. Was like, yeah, we all just kind of hightailed it out there, and so we're flying first thing in the morning, and like as we're going over the Atlantic is when we were supposed to be loading in, and so I have a feeling they probably picked up on it when we weren't there at like 9 a.m. They're like, I don't think they're coming. But so we didn't do a whole lot during COVID for the first, I guess, like 4 or 5 months. For the first little bit, we just kind of sat on standby like everybody because everyone was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then a month to flatten the curve, and then 2, and then eventually we just kind of gave up. We're like, all right, we're not going to do gigs this year, so we just sat around. We ended up doing some live stream things. We did one at Red Rocks, which was super fun.
That is awesome.
It was actually super dope. What they did, which is really cool, is normally, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Red Rocks or like seeing the way that it's set up, but it's like amphitheater style going up to those big rocks. They flipped everything. They built a stage at front of house so that they could use the rocks that are on either side of the audience and they would shoot up like tweets from people that were watching the live stream, and it would like literally show up on the rocks in these giant. It was super cool.
That's really cool.
And then Monitor World in front of house and everything was on stage, so it was kind of dope. It was a weird setup, but it was cool.
Nice. Wow. Well, so I gotta ask you, because like anyone that's watching that knows sound might not know the difference between monitors in front of house or sound and stuff like that. Yeah. And there is a difference, because if there wasn't, there wouldn't be two different jobs.
Monitor world. It's a whole different world, man.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different, exactly.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you could briefly explain the difference in what you do as a monitors guy compared to a sound guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main difference is that front of house, the way I always explain it, front of house mixes for the audience, and then I mix for the band. Is basically how it goes, band and the artist. So you're going to have one guy who's got a console in the middle of the audience, and he is going to be mixing the speakers so that all the audience and then, people watching the show can hear and understand and have a blast. And then what I do is I make sure that the band, the artists, and the crew, everybody else can hear what they need to hear to perform, to, tune guitars. If there's any kind of an issue, we have like different forms of communication that all of us crew people can talk to each other and figure out the problems and how to solve them. Yeah. So that's basically my job, is I make everything loud for the band and the crew and the artist.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I didn't know that for the longest time, because I was just like, man, how do they hear stuff? That's crazy. Because you would think, I don't know. I remember right before I got into sound stuff, I was like, I was like, oh, they just hear.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's no one doing that.
I always just assumed the wedges were just duplicates of the front of house mix that they just sent on stage.
Yep.
Before I went to school and stuff, that's just what I assumed.
That's what I assumed too, because I think no one really knows.
Now look at you.
Because it's always just some guy on the side of the stage, and you're just like, I wonder what he's doing.
Yeah.
And then you find out, yep, it's that. Because it can be pretty gnarly. Like there's some instances where, because like when I was playing shows, and it's probably the same for you guys when you're kids, when you're like in high school doing shows, if you got a wedge, cool. If not, it was just kind of was what it was, and you just powered through it. And it's super fun. Yeah, you heard what you heard, and you had to know your stuff. You had to know that like your parts, and that you could keep up with a drummer and whatnot. But when you get to like, especially arenas and amphitheaters, the slapback can completely throw. It's insane.
Oh yeah.
Like we just did the Armory in this place called the Armory in Minneapolis is where it's at, and the slapback was so. It sounded like you were listening to 3 different shows at once.
Oh, no.
Because it was hitting the far wall. You could hear the PA, and then it was hitting the far wall and coming back, and then it was bouncing off the sides, too. So it sounded like 3 completely different shows.
Oh, man.
So if you didn't have, like, wedges or ears, it would be completely impossible to keep time.
No,
gnarly.
we were talking about this the other day. At my church, we started doing these courtyard concerts in the little courtyard that we have. But the problem is they set this, like, think of it, it's like a rectangle of buildings, except one end is the road, so that's the only end that's open. And it's like people just listening, you can't tell what, and sorry about that. I'm not great at explaining this over words, but I'm going to do it visually with my fingers. It's like this, and the road's over here, it's open, but there's buildings all around over here, and the stage is here, facing another wall, a brick wall. So I set up the PAs, and I'm like trying to angle them a little stupid so that it like doesn't just hit directly against the wall and slam back.
Shoot
so I was like,
pong.
like I play like the intro like or like some Steely Dan or something. It's like really dry drums. It's like, it's like, but like what are you gonna do?
Literally.
They're not gonna move the stage because of the sound problems.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Move everything just because there's a bounce?
Not because your sound guy's like, hey, this could sound better. Like, nah, it's a church too.
And that's like the main reason why they bring us out for that, because that's exactly what happens in these venues. You're like, oh, this sucks. And they're like, yeah, but we don't know what to do about it. And you're like, okay, well, that's why I'm here.
I guess that's my job.
Yep.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So with in-ears, because it's really, so I just played a house show 4 days ago.
This is insane.
No, this is new. I don't know if I even, I might have told you about this last night.
I think you did.
I played a house show to 40 people last week, which
Dope.
it was a great house show. It was a great event. It was a great time. Shout out Gibson Drive. That's the name of the event. But the band that was opening had in-ears.
No, headlining, you said.
Or headlining, excuse me. Had in-ears and click tracks and all this stuff.
For a house show.
Including the 2 wedges. There's only 2 wedges for the whole stage. But on top of the 2 wedges that they also had a mix of for the band, they all had in-ears and click tracks and stuff for a house show. And I just, because obviously you use in-ears or monitors at a bigger stake than a small house show. I just wanted your opinion on the in-ears versus monitors thing. And, because I feel like there could be some like conversations about it in the industry.
Well, actually, first I want to ask, which one do you prefer to do as a monitor engineer?
There's pros and cons to both. I like doing in-ears, give you a little bit more freedom to make it sound like a fun experience for everybody, because you have so much more control. Obviously, like when it's a wedge, you can make the wedge sound really good, but you don't really have control of everything else that's happening around. If there's a lot of lobage off of the PA or slapback or whatever, like you can't really fix that. So that's the downside of wedges. And also, wedges, you're going to end up with feedback issues.
Yep.
Which is, so you got to learn how to ring them out and get your gain structure right. But that being said, so in-ears, I think, gives you a better experience overall, and it gives you more tools to work with the band to make them happy. The downside is, because you have so much control, every little thing that's not quite right is going to be noticeable.
Yeah.
And then also the quality that people expect with in-ears is usually a lot more than with wedges too. So it's like it's a give and take. Like wedges, I could get a mix up and running in a wedge way faster than in-ears, because most people on stage, if you're playing bass, you're probably right next to the hi-hat on the drummer, right? So you probably don't need that much hi-hat in your wedge, right? And same thing, like if the bass player's got his cab right next to the drummer probably doesn't need that much bass in his wedge. So you don't have to send everything to everybody all the time. You don't have to worry about like panning schemes, whether the stage right guitar player is to everybody's right or not. You know, you just throw a little bit of lead in there and everybody's cool with it.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick in-ears. But I do every now and then like to brush off the dust and do some wedge mixes.
Wedge work. Yeah, nice.
Wedge work.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Wedge work, yeah.
Dude, that's a term.
Like woodwork, but wedge work. Yeah.
Wedge work. I like that.
Yeah, it's a nice one.
That's cool.
I don't know. Yeah. I did want to ask you, just not even monitor stuff, but just what's your favorite genres of music? What do you like listening to? What are your favorite artists, bands, stuff like that?
I'm one of those like typical people that listens to everything for the most part. If I had to pick, like the one that I always, if I'm sitting in my car and I can only pull up like one genre, it's probably gonna be metal. Like, let's be honest. Which
I was not expecting that.
I was
was
didn't
not
know if you did or
expecting
not.
oh yeah,
You're happy.
I've always been a metalhead. But I mean, I love classic rock. I grew up with classic rock.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, who doesn't? If you don't like classic
Literally.
rock, you're just wrong.
If your dad didn't play
Thank
classic
you.
rock, what
Thank
was
you very
going
much.
on?
yeah, it's
like,
just
it's just good music, and there's no way around it. I don't care.
And maybe it's not your favorite. That's okay, but you can't say it sucks. You know, I get that. Like as a metalhead, you like a lot of people. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I get it. I'm like, it doesn't hurt my feelings, but there's some things you can't. Yeah, you just
Exactly.
See, it hurts my feelings when people don't like classic rock. So there's the one. Brendan, don't make that face.
You don't love every Journey song in front of Massimo. It's like the end of his world. It's just like, I mean, it's the truth.
he takes it personally.
I'm not gonna.
When we went
deny
to the
that.
show, he just had this big grin on his face the whole time, and I was like, he's loving every moment of this. And even when I went to Guns N' Roses, there was moments where I was like, it was okay. So
No, yeah.
I just thought it was so funny.
Me and Brendan went to go see Journey and Toto. Well, over a month ago. It was in February, and it was great. It was like nosebleeds, but like I just saw them the year before, and it was the same tour. Like Journey was still with Toto, but they were going out again, hitting some different markets. Because like they were in Nashville last year, and this year we had to drive to Knoxville to go see them, and they were in Memphis as well. But it was the 50th anniversary, and I was like, I guess I give them more money. I was like, I can't not go. I was like, I have to buy a shirt.
As you wear a Toto shirt.
No, I got this at the year before when they came to Bridgestone, but I went to go see him again with you, and I was like, I just want a shirt that says 50 on it. And that's what I got. We stood in line. It was great.
You could have just
It's worth it.
made it.
It really was.
Yeah.
I stayed with my aunt and uncle. Shout out to you guys.
That
Nice.
was an interesting time. Yeah.
Dude, I would love. I've never seen Journey or Toto live.
Dude, Toto. Oh.
I would
Oh my
kill to
gosh.
see Toto live. That would be insane.
They're doing some, like they're on the road with Journey right now. I don't know how many dates they have left because they've been out for a while, since January. And but Toto does a few by himself with headlining, and they do a longer set and all that stuff. But dude, like I love Journey. They're like the homeboys for me. But Toto,
they're next level,
It's
and
a
they've
different
always been next level.
Steve Lukather is an animal.
Holy crap.
they're all absolute monsters.
and how they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I'm not gonna get. It's just
Hey, there's still time. There's still time.
There's still time,
yeah.
but I don't.
They're
know.
gonna
I think
die
there's so
soon.
much.
I mean,
There's so much like side stuff. I think that goes into that. I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's just straight bait up.
no.
Yeah.
There's
Because
no
they're
way.
just. How can you not? Literally every front of house guy tunes to Toto.
yeah.
Literally everybody
Yeah,
does.
Rosanna's on my list.
Yeah, it's on everyone's list. Rosanna and not Hold the Line, because I don't like the guitar tone in Hold the Line. That's always been my.
Oh.
It's a very 70s
See,
sound.
it's not that it's bad. It fits the song, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to tune with that. But it's still classic. Everyone tunes to Steely Dan or Toto. You're gonna have one of those too.
Steely Dan's.
And I've heard there's like a story going on that someone once asked Steely Dan and Toto's front house guys. They're like, okay, so everybody tunes to Steely Dan and Toto. So what do you guys tune to? And they're like, Steely Dan and Toto.
I mean, if it works, it works.
My
Yeah,
mix
you
is
don't
perfect.
fix
I
it.
tuned to myself. Thank you.
Yeah, literally.
Exactly.
That's
Literally.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh man, I never thought about that. I never thought about like what do they use?
Yeah, literally. Did you see what happened at the Grammys? Or the Grammys, excuse me, Coachella? The last
No.
few days? Oh. So it just happened as of recording. So you might like this as a metalhead. So Frank Ocean hasn't played Coachella in like 6 years, right? Or hasn't played live since like 2017 or something like that. So when it was announced that he was playing Coachella, it sold out and everybody flew in to go see him. And apparently, I read it this morning, he wanted an ice rink on stage, and then at doors changed his mind, and then all the stagehand and crew had to go out and melt the ice and then like tank like everything out, right? And then he only did like 30, 40 minutes behind a curtain because he didn't like want to be on stage after that because he was like throwing a fit, I guess, or something happened. And then like the fans were enraged, but Knocked Loose was on one of the side stages, and everyone just left Frank Ocean and went to go see Knocked Loose.
Nice.
And there was this giant circle pit, and I forget his name, the front guy of Knocked Loose. He was like, "Listen, I know a lot of you normally don't see this kind of band or this kind of music. Just buy in and just run in a circle. It's awesome. It is awesome. You just watch a bunch of kids just like do this, and
Yes.
okay, and just turn around and start running. Oh my god! If you haven't seen it, you should watch.
Dude,
the
I
clips from
need
it.
to watch
It's
that.
So awesome.
It's like a new generation.
Exactly. Well, and like I was watching, I was like, it's kind of sweet because these kids might like, because kind of like how you're talking, you got to buy into metal, and if you don't get it, I understand. It's kind of like dubstep to a degree. It's just like guitar dubstep. Like it's build-ups and then drops and breakdowns and.
They're literally identical.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
identical. That's the thing. Like, because I had some friends that were super into EDM and all like everything that comes out from underneath. Because EDM has almost as many genres as metal does.
My
There's
gosh,
like
yeah.
so many different ones, and they would always talk smack about metal, and they're not. And I was like, you don't realize it's literally the same.
It's
Yeah.
so close.
You have
Yeah.
synths, we have guitars, but the exact same thing is you guys are waiting for the drop, right?
Yep.
And we're waiting for the breakdown.
Yeah.
And the drop and the breakdown always end up being pretty much exactly the same thing,
Exactly.
and it's formatted the same.
Yeah.
If you're into like I'm into dubstep, like I'm down with it. It's not my
Yeah.
favorite, but like I'm
Yeah.
down with it because it's pretty much the same as metal.
Yeah. It's just electronic metal.
Yeah, it's just it's riffs, drops, and breakdowns. That's
Well,
all it
and
goes
there's
into.
a
all
lot
you
of
need,
Venn
really.
diagram bands where they're like EDM metal bands where the build-up's like and then at the drop it's just the most disgusting metal thing you've ever heard.
Oh yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like Skrillex and then all of a sudden it's just hell on earth. Just
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's pretty sweet. Pretty
See,
sweet.
somebody doing
I'm
pig
glad
squeals.
you're here because he gets to geek out about metal stuff, and someone
Yeah.
can appreciate it and stuff.
Yep.
'cause
Eventually
that's
we'll
just
get
not
someone
my-
on that's like, you know, the classics and the specificities of like whatever his name is from
What?
Journey. Steve Smith or whatever his
Steve
name is.
Perry. Oh my
No, what was the
god.
drummer's name?
Oh, Steve Smith.
Steve Smith. Yeah. They'll start talking about Steve Smith and your
I love
eyes
Steve
will just
Smith.
How
go
do you
like this.
navigate that as a band if you have two people with the same name?
I don't.
That's
know.
got to be really
I
like
didn't even
Steve
think
Smith
about
and Steve
that.
Perry. Did
I
they go
think
by
about it a
last
lot.
names?
Well, they probably called him Perry or Smith or the
I would think
nickname
so.
or something. I don't know. Baldy because Steve
Or was
Smith
he like, you
bald.
call me sire? Steve Perry was
You
like,
call me
sir.
daddy.
Yeah.
I don't think he
Yeah.
was that uptight. I
No,
don't
I'm
know.
just kidding. He's not like Axl Rose in that way. No.
Jeez, I've heard some bad stories about Axel.
Oh, I'm sure Brendan could tell you more.
There are some that I have heard as well, but they're back. That's all I gotta say. They're back, which is I'm happy.
That's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Okay,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
speaking of Steve Perry, again, as of this recording, he posted on his Instagram a few days ago. He was with Chris Lord Alge putting the final touches on a mix of Open Arms, a duet he did with Dolly Parton.
That is
And
That's
sweet.
actually really dope.
I cannot wait.
Dolly Parton, Steve Perry, and Chris Lord Alge. It's gonna
Like it was
sound
just a
great.
picture. Like
It's
Dolly
gonna
was
be
in the
so much
picture.
reverb on that mix.
Oh, dude,
It's gonna be so
verb,
much reverb on that mix.
because Steve, like, because I know this because I'm a super fan, but
You
he
don't
like
say.
when he records or even does demos, it's just like the longest verb on his voice, like 10 seconds, like it's stupid.
yeah.
You know, like there's this, it's like a 45
You
minute.
played it for me, I think. The demo.
Yeah.
All the reverb on it.
Yeah. It's like a 45-minute video. It's just like a picture though, but it's just the audio recording of Steve Perry, and I don't know the guy's name, but it's like his producer or keyboard player. He was like songwriting one of the songs on his second solo album, in 1994 for Love Strange Medicine, and the song was "Missing." There's a G. I know. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Can't forget the G.
And
No apostrophes in this house.
Yeah.
but it was so cool to see the writing process. But which is cool in
But
itself.
the verb was like 15
But
seconds
the verb
long.
was crazy. The whole time, and he would just be talking. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know about that."
That mix is gonna be interesting too, because when you watch like Chris Lord-Alge mix and stuff, he's like, "All right, here's my vocal verbs," and it's 16 channels on his XSL. He's like, "I got a half a second, a second and a half, a 2 second." Like he just lines it all up, and he's just like doing all this. I'm like, dude, that is insanity.
And I'm sure Steven loved it though.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
that's just that's what he does.
Yeah.
I just would never expect. I just wasn't expecting it, like to do that at all. 'cause,
Dolly kind of
you know.
does that though. She does songs with like artists sometimes you don't expect.
But even Steve to be like, I'm going to re-record one of the biggest songs that we've done, when he's like very much
Doesn't do
not
anything.
in Journey anymore, and he does what he wants. I'm like, that's cool, man. You do your thing, because he's over it, which is fine. As a super fan, yeah, I would love to see him with Journey, but like it's. Okay, I'm gonna get off my tangent.
yeah, I was gonna say, half this podcast is gonna be Journey if we're not careful.
Whatever. It was a good segue. Okay, now we'll get out of
I
it.
wanted to ask you, do you want to eventually go to front of house, or do you just like monitors till the day you die?
That's the interesting thing. When I first started doing live sound, I feel like this is the mindset that pretty much everybody does as an audio person when they're getting into it, is like front of house is the cool, like that's what everybody
dream
want to do.
job.
It's the dream job, because
Yeah.
you get to, like, you're the one that makes it super loud. You can make the subs thump real hard. Like, that's the fun part. But through the different jobs that I had worked when I first moved to Nashville, I ended up doing monitors way more than front of house. And when I first started touring, I was touring doing front of house. But after switching, when I started with Bret and going to monitors, I found that, like, I actually really like it. And I found that I'm way better at monitors than front of house. It's a different mindset you got to have, because it's way more psychological than it is necessarily artistic. Like, front of house is mostly about making it sound, first off, as accurate as possible in as many places in the venue as possible, and then after that, making it sound as good as possible.
Yeah.
Like making your own little tweaks in. But it's mostly, front of house is primarily about just making the venue work for what the band's giving you.
Yeah.
And then doing monitors is a completely different mindset, where it's supposed to, you're supposed to make it sound as good as possible, obviously. Like, but at the end of the day, if the band likes what they're hearing, it doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah. If it's
So
good or not. Yeah.
It's way more like the way it's almost like being a consultant / waiter for everybody.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it's like,
true.
because you're a waiter, because someone will be like, I would like more kick drum, and you're like, coming right up, and then you give them,
Yeah, literally.
and you give them more kick drum.
Yeah.
But then you're also kind of a consultant sometimes, where they'll say, I want more of my vocal, and maybe you don't always verbalize this, but in your head, at least as a monitor guy, you're like, actually, no, you don't. You need less of this.
Something else.
You know, and so, but sometimes if you have a good relationship with your band or the artist you're working with, you can sometimes tell them, hey, man, I don't think that's what you need. I think you need this. And that's where, like, the consultant thing comes
Yeah.
in. And then sometimes you just kind of do it without telling them, where you're just kind of like, gotcha. And
Yeah.
then you're like, I'm not going to do that.
Is it hard making that decision if you don't know the band well enough to just do it, to be like, you know what?
It is-
I know this is what they
He
need.
doesn't need it.
Yeah.
It is, because it kind of depends on who you're working with and how much experience you have doing that a lot, like being a monitor, exclusively a monitor engineer, as well as how much experience you have with the band. Because, like, when you've been with, like, I've been with my guys for, this is the 6th year that I've done monitors. I'm also I was the first monitor guy Bret ever had, because when I started with him, he was still one bus, one trailer.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when you've developed a relationship with them, it's actually not that difficult. But you do have to learn when to pick your battles. Like,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes there's going to be times where you're like, I know you don't need that, but you look like you're kind of panicking a little bit, and you're like, this something doesn't feel right, so I'm just going to give it to you so you feel comfortable. There's so much comfort there. There's so many tricks that I do that are somewhat, I guess you could say, underhanded,
Yeah.
where I'm not necessarily doing what they asked me to do, but I know that it's what they need, and I don't. Sometimes I tell them, and sometimes I don't, because at the end of the day, they don't really care. If they're happy with what they're hearing and they can play the show, they can follow along with, if they're not playing for a little bit, they always keep track of where they are in the song, then doesn't really
Yeah.
matter too much.
It's not like to them the make or break it of the show is how good their ears are.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
how good the show is.
It's a nice add-on, and that's always what we strive for as monitor guys. Obviously, is to make it sound as good as possible. But again, it's not always up to us. Sometimes the things that they want and they, for whatever reason, they cannot deviate from this, makes it sound bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, this doesn't sound good, but they love it. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're happy and you're playing a
Yeah.
good show, you're hitting all the notes,
That's
then
right.
exactly.
you do you, boo-boo.
Well, I,
You do you, boo-boo.
I know
That is
that.
exactly right. Yeah.
I know that when I'm drumming, and because I play a few churches around town,
Yeah.
and they're like, they got a click, a track, and then everything in a headphone box, and it's like I got a weird mix, man. Like click is the loudest thing. Like. Was that necessary?
It's the first use of this trash can on camera. I just
Oh
had
my
to make it
gosh!
documented.
For those of you that can't see, he just dropped his
I hope
empty
you heard
liquid
it.
That
death
should
bottle.
be your new like clap in the beginning. Just
You know what
dropping
I'm gonna
liquid
do
death
in
into
post? If you can't hear it, I'm gonna put all three of our mics together and blow it up so you can hear it. I'm gonna just all gain them up like 30 dB and
As
then
you
just
should.
blow them up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, you're drumming around town.
interrupting me. Yeah, I got a weird mix. Like, because it's, and I think from a musician's point of view, it's like I have to force myself to listen to what I need to listen to. Like, I'll crank the click, I'll crank the bass because I need those.
Yep.
Right. And I won't always be like, I'll be in my own world sometimes, and I'll forget. Oh, I'm like playing with people, and I can't not
Yep.
listen. And that's why I crank them because I'm like to force myself to be like, oh, what's this really loud thing
Mm-hmm.
in my ears? It's oh, it's something I gotta listen to.
Yep.
You know, like vocals are usually like a little down. Like, it's crazy to me how different my in-ear mix is. What I personally want versus what I hear out of a song. Because I think people just assume sometimes in monitors it's like, yeah, I'll just make it sound like
the CD,
a song. Yeah. And I was like, nah, all the time. Because for me, again, it's just forcing myself to listen to what I need to listen to.
Exactly.
You know?
The things that keep you on track, especially as a drummer, you're gonna have a lot of click. You have to have a lot of click because if
Yeah.
you're off the click, everybody's screwed. There's
Yeah.
no way you can.
Yeah.
No one's gonna be able to
Literally.
keep time. So it's like with a lot of drummers, what I found, it tends their monitor mix tends to sound like. It sounds like if you were sitting at a drum kit during a show with no in-ear mixes or monitors or wedges at all. Is what it tends to sound like. So you have a little bit of the vocals because you can hear like a little bit of somebody singing down front.
Yeah,
You can hear like a little bit of the guitars on the side and then a lot of bass because they're usually right next to you. It sounds like if you just picked your phone up above the drummer.
Yeah.
And then
A nice
recorded-
mono overhead. That's right there.
See, but that makes so much sense if you're a drummer.
Yeah.
That's what you're used to when you're a kid first learning to play drums. You probably didn't have in-ear mixes and you probably didn't have a full band. It was probably that your buddies were playing guitar
Yeah.
on either side of you and somebody was singing in the middle of the room with some wedge blasting as loud as it could, but that was still away from you. You're hearing most of the
I
drums.
never thought about it like that.
Yeah, but that's like
I was just like, oh, that's just what I want.
see, but it's that I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah.
And that's like the psychology between monitors that you kind of have to learn is like
cool.
between the monitor engineer and the drummer. It's also important to learn. So, for instance, it's easier for me to mix someone playing keys or guitar because those are the instruments that I do. So, like, I know what your experience is like when you're playing those on stage because I've done it. It's difficult with drummers because I'm not a drummer. So you kind of you do have to rely on and think, if I were a drummer, what would I want? But then you have to just develop a relationship with the drummer and figure out what's working and what isn't working.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, not only do you want to have a lot of click and a lot of bass, you're going to want to hear your own drums, but the levels of the drums that you want to hear are going to be different for you than everybody else.
Yeah.
For instance, because you're right next to the snare. You're still going to want a lot of snare, but you may want less snare than the lead vocalist who's out on the thrust
Yeah.
because it's right there. It's super close to you, but you're probably going to want a lot of toms
Yeah.
because those don't always cut through super nice. And other people may want just a little bit of toms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually don't put too much of myself in my ears.
I've
like
never
I might
had it in
pick
ears.
snare a little bit overheads.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm right there. If anything, I'll pop an ear out. And
Yeah. And then go
like,
for
if
it.
it's especially for like a quieter something I gotta do where it's like a little like snare or something or like a small groove, and like I gotta pop it out because I usually mix my ears to like just playing like regularly.
Yeah.
So if my dynamics are really low, I'm like I gotta listen to myself acoustically and make sure I'm
All the ghost notes and everything.
Screwing
Yeah.
up.
I've never played with in-ears in my life.
really on anything.
Never in my. I mean, in the studio, yeah, but it's different because it's headphones and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, for a live show. You
But
mean.
I've never in my life. I've probably
should.
actually played more shows with no wedge than I have with. You know what I mean?
I know I have
Just
in terms of like
listening to-
performing.
I
oh,
honestly
yeah.
same
what's going
actually.
on behind me. You know what I mean?
But in-ears might take the cake for me just because I play all these churches.
I might use my
in-ears.
birthday money I just got and get one of those like $35 Behringer thingies just so I can have.
Just try it out.
Yeah.
It is a totally different world.
I'm afraid that I'm
really
not gonna
weird.
like
It's you. I guarantee you will. So here's the tricky thing. So when I first moved to Nashville, I worked at SIR Studio Instrument Rentals downtown. I was one of the rehearsal technicians. I was one of the guys that was running sound for all the rehearsals, and that was one of the primary things I ended up having to do was work with a lot of different artists who would just like, especially older artists, legacy artists, or people who had just been around for a while. They started to have to move to in-ears, and they had no clue how to deal with it. And if for your first in-ear mix, it's a really bad mix, it is really hard for you to ever want to switch to it.
Yeah.
And that's people would run into. They were like, we want to switch over. We got to make sure you know how to mix ears because we got one shot. It's like, for example, I didn't personally do this, but at some point someone had to go to Dolly Parton and be like, we're going to put you on in-ears. And they were like, and they're telling your monitor guy, you got one shot.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee she's been doing wedges her whole life. If she doesn't like the way this in-ear
I
mix
couldn't even
sounds, then
imagine.
she's probably never going to want to switch, but we really need to switch.
I didn't even think about that. At some point, like 20 years ago or whatever, people had to go to artists and go, hey, we need to change.
Yeah, we need to make this change.
I know you like this.
That's
but
crazy.
This is better.
Well, some artists still don't. Like I thought I saw
yeah.
videos of Luke Bryan because his tours are big, and literally on that long catwalk, he has just left rights like every 10 feet going. Like it's just monitors all the way down the thing. But then he also had in-ears, I think. So it was just
Some of them will do both. Yeah.
Yeah. How common is that? Do you see that?
So
Pretty common?
it's not that common anymore because they've found that there's actually psychoacoustically kind of dangerous to do one ear in, one ear out.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the exact terms of, but what happens is when you have one ear in, one ear out, your brain is programmed to pick up on sounds that sound more natural. And so it's going to focus more on the wedge than the in-ears because the in-ears is closer, but the wedge sounds more. You can pinpoint things. And so it'll pick one or the other, and it's different for different people, but it tends to focus on one or the other that it feels is more natural, which means your brain focuses less on the other, which means you end up turning it up way louder than it needs to be. So people ended up damaging their hearing because they were doing one ear in, one ear out, and maybe they were blasting the wedge way too loud and damaging their hearing because they felt like they couldn't really hear anything that was coming from it because their brain wasn't paying as much attention to it.
And then when they go to put the other one in, it's so loud.
It's
like,
screaming.
oh my god!
And you can actually do that sometime, like even with headphones. If you just if something is playing in front of house and you pop one ear in, you'll start to notice that. Like you could look at your phone when you're listening to a headphone, like this is a normal volume for me to be listening to a song at. Pop one ear in, and you'll notice one or the other is going to sound quiet. Either it's going to be like, oh, this is killing me, and then as soon as you put the other ear in, all of a sudden it evens out.
Yeah,
it's the strangest thing. It'll feel like your ear is like the AirPod or in-ears or whatever it is crazy loud until you put the second one in, and then it feels normal.
Yeah,
and it's such a strange. Yeah, it's such a strange phenomenon.
How often? Because I feel like I would assume that when you have a wedge and you do that for 10, 20 years, you lose some hearing doing that.
Oh yeah.
Is it a similar case with in-ears, or is it a little bit more controlled? Is it prolonging the life of your ears?
It is more controlled, but it is still dangerous. You still have to be careful how much you're sending to people and how much they're turning theirs up. One thing, there's a ear, nose, throat doctor called Ears for You. That's nice.
Sounds like I might need it. Yeah.
She's fantastic. It's Dr. Gromes. I can't remember her first name.
Shout out.
Dr. Gromes. But she's freaking awesome. So what she suggests, what I do is I try to go at the beginning of every year or before a tour, and that's what she suggests to all of the musicians and artists that comes in is like, before you go out on tour, let's do a hearing test, clean out your ears, make sure everything's good to go, and then she'll keep track of your hearing before, and she'll ask if you, at the end of a tour, it's a good idea to come back in, so she can tell you, okay, you were hitting it way too hard on this because you've lost a little bit of this, because hearing just over time, hearing can kind of fluctuate. So in the short term, like when we're on the road doing 3 or 4 shows in a row, I'll notice my hearing starts to get dulled a little bit, and then after a few days off, it comes back. It's just because the way the physics of how your ear works, all the different follicles inside of there, they get stretched by the sound waves, and then eventually they'll just kind of stick a little bit, and you'll start to either get a little bit of tinnitus, or those frequencies won't show up quite as much. But it'll come back over time unless you're exposed to it for a long period of time for many, many years.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, it is like there are some dangers with in-ears of losing your hearing, but it's so much more controlled that it's not as likely. But it's something that as a monitor engineer, I set up my console and all of my gain structure from the inputs to the outputs to where I know where the safe listening range is.
I have one thing I think we should end on here. I just, from the people we've met here at the theater that are on tour that come back from time to time, they always talk about like the camaraderie of like the sound guys and the light guys and just like the crew and like the stories from on tour and just like of the crew being a gang and like little like breakups and like stuff of that. I just wondered if you had any like cool stories of like camaraderie or not on tour with the crew and the band and just everyone as a whole. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot. It would be hard to narrow them down. It kind of depends. There's all these different dynamics through the different levels of touring. So when I first started touring was with an artist named Logan Mize. My favorite group of dudes ever. I love those guys. They're like the most fun I think I've ever had on the road for sure. But we were van and trailer at the time, and I was driving a lot for them too. So it was intense. Yeah. And you're having to stop every 3 or 4 hours for fuel because the trailer's heavy and it's dragging it down, and then you're eating gas station food. Then these guys were obsessed with antiques. They freaking loved antiques. And that's what they wanted all of their stage like decorations to be. They'd find old cowhides that they would want to put on stage. We'd stop in an antique store. They decided they wanted ego risers. But they wanted him to be authentic and Midwestern because Logan's a Kansas guy. He's from Kansas. Yeah. He's real big on the Kansas aesthetic. So they're like, we want it to be like legit, feel Midwestern. So they found stumps on the side of the road that weren't hollowed out, just straight up tree stumps. And they were like, we want those to be our ego risers. So I was having to carry like 60-pound freaking stumps, like roll them in every day and put them up on the stage so that they could stand on top of them. And then they found some taxidermy, like squirrels, and Earl's Squirrel Nibbles Jr. was the name.
Nice.
Little Earl Nibbles Jr., but it was Squirrel Nibbles Jr. Was our mascot for a while.
Awesome.
And it was this stuffed squirrel that we would put on top of the stage left or stage right ego riser. I can't remember which. And then they found ducks, and so we stapled ducks to the ego risers too.
That's good. That's great. Yeah.
They were big on nicknames too. Like we all only referred to each other as by our nicknames.
Really? Nice.
I probably won't say all of them on here because some of them are not exactly appropriate.
Hit us with a few.
The guitar player we called Slide Falcon because he was really good at playing slide, and every time he would do a real good
awesome
slide
name.
riff, it was like sick. A falcon was soaring, so it was Slide Falcon.
That's sick.
I was Chief because I can do this hand whistle that they thought sounded really Native American.
Okay, now you got to do it.
Okay, all right, let's see if I can.
We got to hear it.
Hang on a second.
Wait, put the mic up to your hand so we
yeah.
hear it. Yeah.
So we got to go. I used to be able to do.
That is so cool.
So cool.
The Jurassic Park theme song. We got it. Hang on. I can get it.
That's great.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
So they called me Chief.
That's still cool.
And they actually made me wear a headdress for like the first couple of shows that I did with them because they called me Chief. Until we were doing a show in Nebraska, and I was like, guys, I am not comfortable with this. I am as Caucasian as they come. And we're playing in like Nebraska, and there's actual Native American people here who would probably not appreciate
Someone's
that.
going to punch you.
And I'm not going to. I can't be a part of this. They were disappointed, but they understood. Yeah. I was like, I can't do this. It was funny like once or twice, but now it just kind of feels rude.
That's a great nickname, though. Chief.
Wow.
Oh, I love someone to call me Chief. Unless like
Slide Falcon is awesome.
Slide Falcon is
like
pretty dope.
It's like the free verb vibe.
Yeah, it's better than like
so cool.
Like buddy or hey Chip.
Guy.
Hey guy. Yeah. Or guy. Sometimes guys.
Hey guy. Yeah.
Hey guy. Yeah.
Or like Like, actually, one of the this is a side note. One of the engineers here, Justin. He made fun of me how I pronounced his last name last time. Lou, Leu, Justin Lou.
How is it pronounced?
I don't know. That's I'm assuming.
I would assume Leu would be Lou.
Or
That's
Leo.
what I'm saying.
Leu?
Is it
Or-
Leo? Maybe. Like
I
it's
see. I feel like you're
super-
putting too much into it.
I mean, but if it's not Lou, then what is it? That maybe then it is.
That's
like
right.
Leo.
I don't know.
We'll go with Lou. Justin.
Go with tonight. I'm gonna ask him.
Oh, you're gonna see him tonight?
I don't know if he's working tonight, but if
Oh,
he is,
maybe.
I'll ask
Okay.
him.
It's the tricky part with last names. You never know.
Yeah. Justin, my man Justin. Anyway, he makes it a point when, especially when he runs monitors, but he'll do it for front of house as well. Is he'll take out his notes app or on a piece of paper and he'll get everyone's name. So he is like,
Oh, yeah.
he's not like, hey, bass player, or
Yeah.
like, hey, you. Like he's always like, hey,
John.
John, yeah,
Or
Charles.
Guy. Yeah.
And I'm like,
fella?
that's
Yeah.
like so in the same similar vein as like the nicknames. I'm like that's good to do that, to like, because then it becomes the more camaraderie with the people you're out on the road with, like what 2-3 months, and it's
Yeah.
like, that seems like a great
Dude,
time.
it makes a huge difference, especially like I said, working at SIR where I was doing rehearsals like day in, day out. Learning people's names, even though maybe you'll only mix them once and then maybe you won't mix them again.
Yeah.
But it makes people feel more comfortable and people are way more easy to respond to. It just feels so accusatory when you're like, bass player, go ahead and
Yeah.
give me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even if you say it really nicely, it doesn't sound the same as being like, hey, Brendan,
Yeah.
how's your mix sounding? Or whatever. Everyone's way happier when you do
Yeah.
that. You know what I'm saying?
Not great. Yeah.
It's like, well,
actually my mix
About
sucks,
that.
man.
Yeah. It's in the works. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. But
But we're half hour into the show. How is it into the
yeah,
work?
literally. I kind of wanted to end this with, if there was any artist that you do want to work with, whether it's front of house, monitors, whatever, who would it be? It could be dead or alive too, like anytime ever, and not as a musician, like
Just
as-
someone you wanna work
for
with.
what
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do.
For what I
Yeah.
do doing monitors, I feel like because number one, it's like a childhood favorite band of mine, but number two, as a monitor guy, I feel like this is because from what I've heard, it's an immense challenge. Would be Metallica, because that would be so much fun. But I've heard
The new album is so good.
it's so good, dude. It's so good. But I've heard it's not necessarily that they're insanely picky. It's just that because they're in the round a lot and everybody's running all around stage, and I
Yeah.
don't know that I don't think they're on in-ears fully yet. I think they're still doing a lot of wedges,
Really?
if not exclusively wedges for some of the guys. So I know they have this crazy matrixing thing where whatever wedge James walks over to, they have to send his mix to. So it's like, yeah, it's like this
It's a lot more interactive.
insane.
Roll it.
I saw an interview with Big Mick talking about it, and it's like it's insane, that kind of stuff. So that would be a fun one. I feel like
wow.
legacy act. I've always loved Metallica
Yeah.
ever since I first heard "And Justice for All" was like the first one.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
can't go
Literally,
wrong.
come on.
That's cool.
like come on.
What else is there?
Yeah,
You know.
that's how you start
Yeah. That's great.
down the path
That
to
is
metal.
sweet. That sounds sweet. I would totally do that. That sounds so difficult though, to have to track him.
I
I
have no
know.
idea how they do it. I would
I
love
wonder if
to
there's
like,
a way that you could
find
put
out.
like a tracker in his pocket so that like it literally follows him, so you don't have to do it. Like it automates it and just follows him.
like a Dolby Atmos
Yeah,
thing.
like a Find My
Yeah.
iPhone
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Yeah, like it just like wherever it goes. I don't know. If you had a
That's
digital
actually-
console-
It's like you're a submarine.
If you could do like a geofence type system,
Yeah.
I don't know if it would work with that small of
Scale
a
thing.
field,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
'Cause I don't know how well, but
Hey.
if it could, that would be dope.
that would be great.
billionaires out there. That's next.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
just
All the
gave
folks
her
at
$1 million
Ocean
idea.
Reef Club,
yeah.
hit me up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But,
Okay, well, we usually give a time for everyone to shout out their socials or where you can see them next. So,
Well, first,
you
thank
wanna-
you so much for coming.
yes,
This
Yeah,
has
dude,
been
of course.
awesome.
Yeah,
dude,
thanks for
this
having
is
me.
so
What a
much
blast.
fun.
This is a blast.
We'll
Yeah.
have to do this
Definitely come
again
back.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We
But
definitely
yeah,
want it.
shout out anything you want to shout out, your socials, anyone you want to shout out, yourself, doesn't matter. Go for it.
Oh man, I've never done a shout out before. Shout out these guys for having me,
Hey.
like for Brendan and Massimo. Thanks, guys. I'm not really big on. I have socials, but I don't really
Yeah.
do much on my socials. So
That's okay, yeah.
I'm just gonna. You know what? Let's promote you guys.
Or
In
go
the
see
green
Bret
room.
Young.
Yeah, go see
Yeah,
Bret
go
Young.
see Bret
Right,
Young.
go
Yeah,
see this
there we
man.
go.
Yeah, and
Let's
if you're
go see
close
Bret
enough to
Young.
the stage, you might be able to see this guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Buy really good
I'll be
seats.
standing there
See him.
staring at the band
Yeah.
in,
Yes.
in an almost awkward manner.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's my job.
Eyes wide open. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll put your stuff down below anyway. Just
Yeah.
if someone wants to find
Sweet,
you,
yeah.
contact
I
you,
love
that'd be
that.
Great. Brendan, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, my Instagram is bden8, BDEN_8. The Green Room TikTok is, if you look up the Green Room podcast, it shows up, but it's also podcast TGR is the username. But yeah,
Your usernames are tough.
shout
to
out
come by
us
these
and
days.
shout out / come on the podcast. Say it every time.
One day.
I'm Massimo Stefano. You can find me everywhere at Massimo D Music, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm on YouTube. It's just my name again, Massimo Distefano. I know it's a mouthful. Don't worry.
Yeah.
One
thing I forgot about. If you follow
What?
me, be on the lookout. I might be putting on an event at the end of the year.
Ooh.
Oh,
Thinking
boy.
about it.
Intriguing.
Sneaky. Hint, hint. Pop goes punk. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, that
I'm there.
thing. Yeah. Steve Perry, we love you, even if they won't admit it. They do deep down. I know they
You're
do.
a great singer, man.
I cannot
Fantastic.
wait till Open Arms with Dolly Parton comes out. I'm gonna be posting that so much.
He's going to cry.
If Slash and Steve Perry make a song together, we have to do a reaction live on the podcast.
Please,
You'll both be crying, I think.
So, dude, imagine it's a ballad too, and it's like a November Rain solo at the end, but Steve Perry's got all this time to like sing. Oh my god,
That'd be like a religious
they
experience.
totally should do it. They totally should do it. Sorry, sidebar.
No, that's one of the best sidebars I've ever heard. Okay.
But, yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Check us all out. Thank you again to the Franklin Theater.
Yeah. Thank you,
for this
Leland.
Wonderful space. Thank you, Leland. And leave down below who you might want to see come on the show.
Yes.
And we will do our best to get them on.
Yes, shooting our shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but-
All right. Everyone have a good one.
Yeah, peace.
And we'll see you. Ciao.
Money.